Good afternoon. Welcome to another Hatton's live stream, and today we've got another Loco profile for you, taking a look at some of the most famous locomotives on the UK rail network today and some of the models that they have inspired as well. No doubt some of you have already guessed or seen the topic for today's stream. We are indeed looking at the EMD Class 66, which has been a feature of the UK's rail network for over 20 years now and has transformed and revolutionised not only freight on the railways, but the fleets that operate them as well. So let's take a little bit of a look at the history of the locomotives, and we'll look at some of the models a little later on. If you do have any questions regarding the Class 66, please do put them in the chat and I'll answer them throughout the stream as well. So we've actually got to go back a little bit further with the Class 66 story, and we are going right back to the mid-1980s. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will spot that this is a Class 59, and this is one of the first American-built locomotives to be deployed on the UK's railway network. These were introduced in the mid-1980s, privately owned by Foster Yeoman. They were essentially an SD40-2 locomotive, mainly used in the USA, that was shrunk down and fitted into the UK-style body shell that you see there. These were completely different than pretty much everything you saw in the UK at the time, mainly being UK-built locomotives at the various works of British Rail, but they completely transformed the private services, and further Class 59s were built and delivered during the early 1990s. But with the privatisation of the UK's railways in the mid-90s as well, a lot of the brand new independent freight operators were looking at this American design thinking, well, these are really reliable and pretty useful as well. They've got tried and trusted dependent technology. A lot of the diesel locomotives that had been in use were really starting to show their age, some of the classic designs that were coming through. So it was the newly formed English, Welsh and Scottish Railway that in 1996 placed an order for 250 Class 66 locomotives. I believe at the time it was the largest single diesel order that had been placed for many years on the UK's railway network. And the first ones were delivered in 1998. The plan was to replace pretty much all the other designs that EWS owned at the time. So we're talking Class 37s, 47s, 56s, 58s, some of the Class 60s as well. Many of those locos still are in operation, but the 66's reliability and ease of repair as well, with quite a modular design in there, plus the fact that there was 250 of them as well. It made getting spare parts easier. It really wasn't an issue to repair these locos either. So they hit the UK freight market, which was struggling at the time as well, with immediate success. And of course, if one person gets them, everyone else sees them and thinks, well, we want a little bit of that too. So very quickly, there were orders placed for many other operators, including Freightliner, which was at the time using Class 47s. And it allowed a couple of new operators to start too, such as GB Rail Freight, who started in 2001 with a very small fleet of 66s and have grown ever since. So there's been many, many different liveries carried by the class, past and present. We can see some of them here, right from that original EWS into the Freightliner of the early 2000s, with more modern operators coming on, such as Direct Rail Services, which got their first Class 66s in 2003, GB Rail Freight we previously mentioned, and a couple of the one-off unusual liveries there as well, which we'll cover shortly. But the 66s really went from strength to strength. With 3,300 horsepower, they were comparable to some of the most powerful locomotives on the network at the time. The reliability was sky high compared to the British Rail locomotives that had been running for quite a few years. Driver comfort as well, a lot more mod cons in the cab, including air conditioning on some of the locomotives. So they really revitalised the UK's rail industry and the freight industry also. It wasn't just the UK that the 66s saw success in either. A very similar group of locomotives were deployed to various railways in continental Europe and even further afield. So we've seen them in Norway, Sweden, Belarus, I believe, Belgium, you name it, essentially. Quite a few have gone over to Poland and even Africa as well, where there are some Class 66 variations that run on passenger services in Egypt and Gabon as well. So a really international locomotive from those original American and Canadian routes. It really started to develop and spread its wings. So from those initial 250, I believe we're almost at 500 Class 66s in the UK now. They keep coming and coming, and unfortunately, due to regulations in the UK, no more are allowed to be built and supplied now. But that's not stopping some of the operators getting hold of them. They are sourcing some of the locomotives from other countries, bringing them over here, refurbishing them to UK standards, and putting them out on our freight services in the network. But some of the locos have gone the other way too. I'll just show you a picture now of a EWS 66 with the rebranded cargo rail livery. Worked over here for about 10 years and then headed over to continental Europe. We can see it there heading away from Strasbourg, presumably by the sign anyway. And it's great to see these UK profile locomotives with huge continental size wagons behind them as well. So I believe there's about 50 or so that come back and forth between the UK and continental Europe, switching places as and when the traffic requires it. But looking at the present day, the 66 is still a huge part of the UK rail network. If you've been to a station, well, pretty much any time in the last 20 years or so, the 66 hauls most of the freight services out there. I can pretty much guarantee if you are a spotter or you're a rail enthusiast, you have no doubt seen one or more or many of these Class 66s out there on the network. And they are very easy to spot as well. They've got quite a distinctive body shape and style and some really eye-catching liveries too, especially from GB Rail Freight, who seem to be making a lot of what they call celebrity locomotives, really. So we have the large logo blue, which a lot of you will have seen out on the network. There's also the Biffa red after the Biffa bins as well. There's the BR green, there's the rainbow livery. I believe they've actually got 20 to 25 liveries that are outside the standard style livery that you see at the end there as well. So some really characteristic locomotives, even looking back right through British rail history as well, commemorating the railways before the 66s came along. I'll just show you a couple more there, a couple more variations that I have for you. And this is another operator that's recently, well, about 10 years ago now, actually got some 66s, which is Colas Rail. They also operate a couple of classic diesel locomotives, but their main fleet is the Class 66, which, as you can see here, is used on a variety of heavy freight services. But with 3,300 horsepower, huge haulage capacity, they can go pretty much anywhere in the UK as well. They run right to the top of Scotland, down into the southeast, into the southwest, into Wales as well. There isn't really a part of the UK that they don't cover, on many, many, many different duties too. They can be seen on infrastructure work, they can be seen on container traffic, such as the GB Rail Freight locomotive we see here. They can be used on heavy coal duties also, as we saw with the Colas Rail Freight locomotive. But a little bit of an unusual one, they do currently have quite a lot of passenger duties as well. We can see here that a Class 66 is used on one of the most prestigious trains running in the UK today, the Royal Scotsman, which transports wealthy tourists around Scotland in luxury coaches with a specifically painted Class 66 locomotive at each end. And also, I believe at the moment they are working on the Caledonian sleeper services as well, as far as Inverness, supporting the Class 73s that run them. So, as you've probably guessed already, there are many, many, many different ways for the 66s to run. There's many different variations of them out there. There's pretty much every colour you can imagine as well that has been carried by the Class 66. And with there being nearly 500 in the UK and many more in various countries abroad as well, you have no doubt seen one of these locomotives on the tracks, and they're bound to be out there for years to come. But speaking about getting them onto your tracks anyway, let's speak about the models. And no sooner had the real life Class 66 came out than models in 00 gauge appeared as well, with Lima's model coming into the fray about 1 or 2 years after the real life 66s arrived on the network. That model was superseded and actually passed to Hornby, who carried out some upgrades on it in the mid-2000s, along with a fully new super detailed model from Bachmann around the same time as well. Far more recently than that, we've got the Hatton's Originals Class 66, which has been released this year. There's 37 different variations of this at the moment, covering the sheer variety of liveries and differences between the different types of 66s that are out there, and that one's available right now. Heading into the N-Gauge, we've got a few varieties here of Dapol's model, which has been around a couple of years now, but is still a really nicely detailed model, again, with all the different body shell variations and the liveries that you can see there too. In fact, I will give you a little bit of a close-up at the Dapol model here, and this is number 66789 in the previously mentioned BR large logo blue, which isn't an original livery for the class. I'll just make sure I can spin that around for you. There we go. And this isn't actually an original livery for the class. This is painted to commemorate the 50 years of British Rail operation. And you can see the detail on there, which for an N-Gauge model, I'll just pause it on the other side so you can see. You've got the moulded grills on there, the separately fitted etched nameplate, and the really rich BR large logo blue colours. And this is one that's really caught with a lot of different enthusiasts out there as well, seeing this juxtaposition of the modern Class 66 locomotive with that heritage 1980s livery as well. It's caught a lot of people's imaginations, this, and models are available in N and O gauge. As always, if you are interested in the models, we've got all the information by clicking the link down in the description. I've put a link in there so you can see every single Class 66 we have available at the moment. And someone in there has already asked, we're missing a larger locomotive that I usually have at the end if I've got any O-gauge models. There is an O-gauge Class 66 on the way from Dapol. They're releasing quite a few different liveries on that. So if you are after an O-gauge 66, I've not got anything to show you right now, but certainly on a video in the future, I'll be bringing that to you and we'll be getting a closer look. But for now, we've got N-gauge and O, and you can see the sheer variety of colours. A lot of freight operators now are partnering with the actual freight companies they transport as well. So we have Ocean Network Express that operates a huge fleet of container ships as well, and they've got their own distinct locomotive in this one pink livery that you can see here. We also have the Bifford that we mentioned before, which is partnered with the Bifford Bins Company, so that does haul some of the bin trains along the network, but can be also seen on a number of different duties out there too. And just showing you again some of the sheer variety, you can see some of the detail differences in the front of the 66s there. There are differences in the economy versions as well. There's versions here, as you can see, with the what they call the bug headlights, or a couple of people call it bug headlights. We've got the original Y-pack headlight style here, seen on 66043. And then there are three main different grades of 66. So you've got the normal version, shall we say, then you've got the economy version, which is the eco-friendly model, and you've also got the heavy haul version, which is mainly used by Freightliner, which has different gearing, so it's a little bit slower. The normal 66 can reach 75 miles an hour, but these can usually reach 60, but they do have a different gear ratio, so they can haul a little bit more, especially on some of the heavy coal trains that they do haul out there as well. And here we go indeed, we've already got a spotter out there as well. Red Shed saying he's keeping an eye out on some of the 66s out there, and 789 looks to be one of his favourites in the large logo livery there too. So if you do want to see one of these locomotives in real life, you can pop down to pretty much any station in the UK and see a 66 go past. There is that many of them out there. As we said before, there's almost 500 on the UK rail network now. So if you are a modern image modeler, if you've got a layout in N-gauge, O, or O-gauge, and you're modelling anything from 1998 onwards, you need a 66 in your collection. there isn't a part of the railway that hasn't been covered by these locomotives in that time. They get everywhere, they are all over the place, but that really does just show the reliability of the design and the sheer number of them out there, with every single major freight operator in the UK, including some past and present guys is there also, including the original EWS guys, which now goes to the DB Schenker, as you can see there, and the DB Cargo UK too. So if you've got any particular favourite colours, you no doubt be able to find one on a 66. I've got pretty much every colour of the rainbow here in front of me today, and there's far more besides this as well in real life and in model form too. So do have a look at that link in the description. All the information we've got on the 66 models we have available right now is there, including pricing, including models we've got available to pre-order, all the tech specs too. You'll see all your digital status, sound status, the whole lot is there. So if you're really in the market for a 66 or you're looking at expanding your collection, do have a look at that link. But I really hope I've inspired you to take a look at these locomotives. With some of the fans of classic diesels out there, they do divide opinion a little bit, because they did see off a lot of those heritage locomotives. But at the same time, the time was right, and they were a hugely reliable class. They completely woke up the UK rail freight industry and that further beyond as well, with locomotives being used in Europe, as we can see again there. They've spread the wings even further with brand new operators coming in, which probably a lot of these operators wouldn't have been able to start up without locomotives like 66s being able to order. And then straying away from the freight services, they've also found a home on passenger services too. So let's face it, guys, the 66s have got to be the go anywhere, do anything, any colour, any railway, any traffic, any excuse to get them on your layout. If you are a modern image modeler, you pretty much need a 66. So do check out that link in the description for more information. If you'd like to know any more about the locomotives, or you'd like to know any more about the models available, do put your comments below, or do get in touch with our customer experience guys too, who can answer any questions you have. Otherwise, thanks as ever for the great questions and chat in the live stream. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time. Take care.